This may be the last time you hear from me for a bit because we've canceled the internet at the house, and I'm not sure what kind of good recording, even this is suboptimal hotel recording situation, but I'm not really sure until I get situated down in Little Rock in the next maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Then I'm going to be able to have much content out. So consider this like a bonus. And the reason I wanted to talk about with you tonight a little bit is that somebody brought to my attention an article about RFK Jr. and his environmental record and why the Democrats shouldn't be so hard on him, being a spoiler for Trump and messing everything, or spoiler on Biden and getting Trump in office and messing up the environment when, Bobby has his own market-based solutions he's going to offer once we all have digital wallets and the giraffes have their Jonathan Ledgard digital wallets, and then we're going to have good environmental progress, right? That's how it's going to go. So I'm in the hotel and there's not great, I can't get my login working with the free unsecured guest Wi-Fi, whatever BS. And so I'm trying to do this in a very cobbled together way. So, pardon my lack of sophisticated editing technology here. I'm just going to do my best. But I wanted to get this out because I think I had this sort of revelation today about the importance of the environment and environmental signaling between people and the environment. And so while I've been making all these Utah trips, I've been trying to make my way through this, The Dancing Wu-Li Masters by Gary Zukov. And this is an old book. It's from like 1979. And it's all about the new physics, only it's not 1979 anymore, so it's not so new. But he connected with people at Esalen, and they're like, you should totally write this book. And so anyway, so I've been making my way through it. And I'm sort of applying a lot of these ideas about quantum mechanics, which, I'd heard the terms, but I'm not great with abstraction and I'm not great with math. And I never took physics in high school or college. So, I'm struggling with it, but I'm seeing themes, because this is written like for a lay audience, that relate to Web3 emerging technology and what I think of is actually our intrinsic power as observers in a participatory universe to affect energetically things around us, and how that may be harnessed into the system through gamification. And someone else had recommended this book to me, and I only just very much briefly started, but there's a lot of people out there who are like, I don't understand gamification. And I would say, well, look up Kevin Wereback, because he's the blockchain gamification guy at Penn and Wharton. But this is a pretty thick book all about aspects of gaming. And I think we can understand that gaming has an addictive quality, right? And people start to lose track of what's reality in real reality and what's in game reality. And with metaverse and augmented reality, life is going to become even more gamified. And again, it was a game before. Clearly, we know, like, once you're in a society, social rules and how you get ahead, and cautionary tales of things that get people kicked out of society, and that is a game, but it's at the scale and the time frame is different than it is once we get into atomized pico nano measurement scale at a massive level of swarm intelligence with supercomputing and sensors everywhere and ubiquitous sensing and outside in a robot and everything. It's going to get a little different and weird. I mean, the way in which sort of domestication and civilization is going, our brains are not really equipped to go as fast as these sensor networks are trying to make our brains go. And so anyway, so gamification, it's a thing. There's a lot of people writing about it. They would like for us to play a game, to live in the game, right? To live in the game, and the game is structured by the outside-in robot. And as we throw around our tokens, showing our choices and our signals, that's all going to be part of the coordination that is the noosphere, or the one, or the unified coordination fabric of consciousness on this planet. And I think I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to go through some maps in a bit, but like Robert Bosnak looking at embodied intelligence, that is all part of sort of the system. And I think there's aspects of manifestation in our present reality that are related to to our intention and our wills. Oh, okay. So clicked out there for a second. I'm hopped on some sort of unsecured Wi-Fi, so it's popping in and out. So I want to talk a little bit about quantum mechanics, and I'm going to read this because I think that this is really central to the carbon discussion and the environmental discussion and Greta, and then how Bobby's going to sort of like try to slide in there with his non-central bank digital currency, community currency, token behavior things that we're all going to want to play the game because Bobby's going to ask us and Nikki's going to ask us, and it's going to seem fun because we're the freedom fighters, and sure, a lot of us like the environment and whatever, but we're going to play it with our participatory tokens, right? And, I've always tried to figure out how the health freedom Bobby with the venture capitalist Bobby with the environmental crusader Bobby is going to sort of thread this, right? But the PACs with all of Nicole's money, and clearly she knows all about the machine learning, right? I'm sure that they've parsed lots of A/B testing and bouncing against our digital twins and our archetypes to sort of figure out like how are they going to thread this needle to like bring people in this sort of populist transpartisan moment together. And I'm not saying I actually think RFK Jr. is going to win the presidency, but I think it is his job to manifest in our conscious and subconscious realities these ideas that are going to be carried forward in a bigger way in the next 5 to 10 years. And so he is the hero archetype, the Jungian hero archetype of the flawed human being with this deep legacy, this family story, the crusader against the deep state, and he's here to sort of imprint on our consciousness. And his backstory as the riverkeeper, right? Because water, I think, is sort of structured water and programming of water, including wastewater treatment, which is Google, again, Shanahan is all connected to, is part of this collective information processing through our biology, in my opinion. I think that that's how it's going to go. So his role, both symbolically as a riverkeeper and the fact that Children's Health Defense, before it became Children's Health Defense, was called the Mercury Project. And Mercury and Hermes are it's the god of commerce and boundaries and transitions and the underworld, that this interdimensional communication that's attempting to be happening at scale through networked consciousness using our biology, our water, liquid crystal biology, and our fascia. It's very telling that his current situation is in the former Mercury Project, in my opinion. So environment. So I want to just read, this is a couple of pages out of this, The Dancing Woolly Masters. And again, I'm trying to sort of process all this physics. And again, this physics may not even be current. Like I know a lot of people have questions about quantum, this, that, and the other. But what we can say is that people in positions of power and influence in the venture capital world and in the academic world and in the policy world all believe in these things. So whether or not they're actually true, they're believed to be true, and then they're therefore influencing the world as we know it. So that's the premise that I'm going with. Okay, so this is about sort of us as observers with a participatory universe. And if we are agents in a gamified computation, it's very important that the system understand our context, because there is no one reality. The reality is based in the concept of the heart and the soul of the observer and their history and their projections and their memories, right? So there is no one reality. We all have our own understanding of reality, right? Like my family probably understands why I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordering a tent so I can go camping and try to find a new house. Their rationale for why I'm here is probably very different from my internal story of why I'm here. So we all have our own stories that we're living inside, and we can maybe empathize or project into other people's stories, but we can never really know what their understood reality is. And so imagine that times, panpsychism of all the beings on planet Earth, all of those realities that are coexisting in situations, in environments, and in context, in relation to one another in terms of things that we traditionally understand as living and things we might traditionally understand as not living, or conscious and unconscious. So the context, which is the environment, is really central. Oh, okay, we froze up for a second. Okay, is really central. And so I think this is just a speculation, and this is me using my imagination, and we'll see how it is. But my thought is that the Greta slash sustainability slash, corporate greening, which NRDC, Natural Resources Defense Council, is a part of, and the token engineering, that this is all part of that. Sorry, this is getting loud. This is all part of situating us as nodes in the computational matrix in this larger cosmological, perhaps interdimensional computational process, pattern recognition process. So here, let me read this part about webs of relationship and think about this in the context of man in the environment. And again, that's something that Leo worked on early on. That was sort of the core aspect of him looking at the International Geophysical Year and the UNESCO back in the 70s. And again, that's when this book is written. That's when Esalen took off the human potential movement. And as I've talked about in my blog today, I think we can understand optimization eugenics as morphing into human potential movement, which has a lot of like new agey self-improvement stuff going on. And now that is feeding into the quantified self biohacking movement. And so there's this long trajectory, well beyond, in my opinion, back to the Society for Psychical Research, and then the Macy conferences, and then Esalen and the psychedelics, and now we're moving into managed consciousness. And that man is always situated in an environment because you can't understand someone's reality unless you understand their context. And the environment is not at one point, but it's in space-time, right? So it's the entire trajectory of memories of things that have happened or didn't happen in the context of a person's life. And that is what the ledger is doing. It is creating these webs of relationship. So here is Gary Zukov on, this is on page 93 of this edition of the book, called What Happens. To apply quantum theory, the physical world must be divided into two parts. These parts are the observed system and the observing system. The observed system and the observing system are not the same as the region of preparation and the region of measurement. Region of preparation and region of measurement are terms which describe the physical organization of the experimental apparatus. Observed system and observing system are terms which pertain to the way that physicists analyze the experiment. The observed system, by the way, cannot be observed until it interacts with the observing system. And even then, all that we can observe are its effects on a measuring device. The observed system in the double-slit experiment is a photon. It is pictured as traveling between the region of preparation and the region of measurement. The observing system in all quantum mechanical experiments is the environment which surrounds the observed system, including the physicists who are studying the experiment. While the observed system is traveling undisturbed, propagating in isolation, it develops according to natural causal law. This law of causal development is called the Schrödinger wave equation. The information that we put into the Schrödinger wave equation is the data about the experimental apparatus that we have transcribed into the mathematical language of quantum theory. Each set of the experimental specifications that we transcribed into the mathematical language of quantum theory corresponds to what physicists call an observable. Observables are the features of the experiment and nature that are considered to be fixed or determined when and if the experimental specification that we have transcribed are actually met. We may have transcribed into mathematical language several experimental specifications for the region of measurement, each one corresponding to a different possible result. The possibility that the photon will land in region A, the possibility that the photon will land in region B, the possibility that the photon will land in region C, etc. And in the world of mathematics, the experimental specifications of each of these possible situations in the region of measurement and in the region of preparation corresponds to an observable. In the world of experience, an observable is the possible occurrence coming into our experience of one of the sets of specifications. Now, I'm just saying, like, think about all of these observables and this idea of using mathematics and encoding it and all of the possibilities, because I think that might be part of the smart contract logic layers. Like the protocol layer may be part of encoding all of the options and then creating an environment for observation and documentation in the permanent ledger. Okay, so, in other words, what happens to the observed system between the region of preparation and the region of measurement is expressed mathematically as a correlation between two observables, production and detection. Yet we know that the observed system is a particle, a photon. Said another way, the photon is a relationship between two observables. This is a long, long way from the building block concept of elementary particles. For centuries, scientists have tried to reduce reality to indivisible entities. Imagine how surprising and frustrating it is for them to come so close, a photon is very elementary, only to discover that elementary particles don't have an existence of their own. All right, so what they're saying is the physicists used to try to break everything down into individual units, but because of the fact that they only exist in relation to the observing system, they can't actually exist outside of it. So all of the existence is through relationality. And that relationality, I think, is part of what's embedded in the Internet of Everything and the ubiquitous computing. Okay. As Stapp wrote for the Atomic Energy Commission, an elementary particle is not an independently existing, unanalyzable entity. It is, in essence, a set of relationships that reach outward to other things. So think about that in terms of signaling and community currencies and social physics and permanent ledgers. That is a web of relationships across time in 4D and maybe additional dimensions that we don't understand yet. And so that's what I think actually Will Ruddick and the grassroots economics people, because he was coming out of the Stanford Linear Accelerator project, right? It's not about money, it's about the signal. I mean, I keep trying to say that over and over and over again. It's about the signal, it's about the signaling. It's evolutionary economics. It's a signal that says something about a pattern. And so these tokens, these economic systems, yeah, at the one level, they're functioning as we understand normal economics, in the world. But then at these deeper levels, I think it is about quantum mechanics and then creating through these digital wallets and digital twins and digital identities, webs of relationships that feed into future prediction markets. And I do think if you're watching, that the parametric insurance and the predictive analytics and the risk is all part of the same, dealing with scenarios, right? Creating a game board that's infinite smart contracts of infinite possibilities and probability distributions to track the particle to where it hits and it is observed, but it can only happen in the context of a watcher, right? Or multiple watchers. And then the pattern through is documented for some purpose. And so I think all of that is the environment, right? Everything that's being navigated through all of the branches of the trees, the branch that's ultimately done, that is traveling through space-time, and that space-time isn't of itself, I think, an environment that is monitored. And so I think they want us to play a game because they want the signal to never drop. This thing is dropping, right? I'm trying to have this recording and I'm on guest Wi-Fi from the next hotel over because I can't get mine to work here in this hotel. The signal is dropping. They don't want the signal to drop. They want you to play the game, emit the signal of the choice architecture, to have the pattern to map our understanding of this reality and possibly guide it to some sort of consensus through the collective subconscious, in my opinion. Okay, I'm just going to repeat this part. As Stapp wrote for the Atomic Energy Commission, an elementary particle is not an independently existing, unanalyzable entity. It is, in essence, a set of relationships that reach outward to other things. Okay, so that's Web3. That's digital ID. That's token engineering. It is creating the webs. And then I think those webs are energetic webs, which is what will pull in all of the Michael Levin in the earlier work in morphogenetic fields, and then those fields themselves have archetypal qualities which relate back to Jung, but also about the I Ching and the hexagrams. Furthermore, the mathematical picture which physicists have constructed of the set of relationships is very similar to the mathematical picture of a real physical moving particle. The motion of such a set... Okay, I have to start over again because it froze. Furthermore, the mathematical picture which physicists have constructed of this set of relationships is very similar to the mathematical picture of a real physical moving particle. The motion of such a set of relationships is governed by exactly the same equation which governs the motion of a real moving particle. Wrote Stapp. A long-range correlation between observables has the interesting property that the equation of motion which governs the propagation of this effect is precisely the equation of motion of a freely moving particle. Things are not correlated in nature. In nature, things are as they are, period. Correlation is a concept which we use to describe connections which we perceive. There is no word correlation apart from people. There is no concept correlation apart from people. This is because only people use words and concepts. So I think this is really important to know. Like if we're talking about the difference between nature and the observer, like conscious observers, we are the ones making correlations, but they're fictitious really in our mind. Like we're applying the structure, but they wouldn't exist without us. So we're here and we're applying correlations. Correlation is a concept. Subatomic particles are correlations. If we weren't here to make them, there would not be any concepts, including the concept of correlation. In short, if we weren't here to make them, there wouldn't be any particles. Quantum mechanics is based on the development in isolation of an observed system. Development in isolation refers to the isolation of measurement. We call this situation isolation, but in reality, nothing is completely isolated except perhaps the universe as a whole. What would it be isolated from? The isolation that we create is an idealization, and one point of view is that quantum mechanics allows us to idealize a photon from the fundamental unbroken unity so that we can study it. In fact, a photon seems to become isolated from the fundamental unbroken unity because we are studying it. Photons do not exist by themselves. All that exists by itself is an unbroken wholeness that presents itself to us as webs, more patterns of relations. Individual entities are idealizations which are correlations made by us. In short, the physical world, according to quantum mechanics, is, quote, not a structure built out of independently existing unanalyzable entities, but rather a web of relationships between elements whose meanings arise wholly from their relationships to the whole. The new physics sounds very much like old Eastern mysticism. And so I just want to emphasize this. All that exists by itself is an unbroken wholeness that presents itself to us as webs, more patterns of relationships. All right, and so I think that's really interesting because my friend Sean has been reading Michaela, well, it's not by her. She recommended this book called The One. And it touches on a lot of these same ideas, right? The unity. And I think that is actually the singularity. It's not something that's going to happen. It's something that's already happened. We are all part of a unified system, but then this implicate explicate order is something that happens, and that there are patterns that come out of it, and that we as observers make sense of the patterns. And in this participatory universe, like we're active participants, and through our observation and through our context and through our past histories and trajectories and the things around us and where we're going and what we're thinking in terms of constructing a reality, both individual internal realities and then collective realities. And so I think that this Web3 is a way of like formalizing through ledger systems to make these webs of relationship more permanent or more visible. I'm not sure how it actually works into the mechanics or why, but I do believe that the token engineering is ultimately about mapping webs of relationship, just like my Kumu maps, right? And then using them for some purpose. And like I said, Robert Bosnak, who is the Jungian, he's talking about embodied imagination. And so I think this idea of embodied consciousness, embodied intelligence, working to create things individually and collectively is part of the goal of this gamification that is happening. And I think that's why it's embedded in religion, world religions, right? That this is coming out of like the World Religion Council and ecumenicalism. Sorry, it's coming out of like the World Religion Council of World Religions and ecumenicalism and DHOC and Visa, right? Your digital twin is your credit card statement. Because whatever is in this soulful manifestation is something that has to come from the field, from God, from the creator. It's something that comes through us into this reality as we perceive it. And so it's very important that it not be mechanical, that it have emotion, that it have heart, that it has the torus field in order to emerge, to this emergence that's happening. And again, I'm not trying to like judge or say good or bad or whatever. Like, to me, I want to understand it. And then I want to say, wait, before we do any of these things, especially with kids or with nature and your nanoparticles and your frequency and the military and the options traders, we need to know why, right? You know, like I've been listening to the three body problem stuff, and it's this idea of, you know, the aliens are coming in 400 years, so we have to do all these things to protect ourselves and be on a war footing to figure out how to fight the aliens that are coming multiple generations ahead. And like, is that what's going on? Like, I mean, I'm not saying it is, but I'm like, if that's what's going on, just tell us so that we can know, and we're not just being manipulated by your nudges and these things that are whatever, just level with us. It's what is this about? And then we can judge if we want to participate or not. But anyway, so that's why this web of relationship aspect and space-time and relativity, in my opinion, I think the whole carbon trading stuff is about tied to gamified behavior and the UN SDGs and the Internet of Bio-Nano things, is to situate us in man in the environment, as UNESCO said, dating back to the 70s, to prepare us for some sort of social network, social computation. And it's situating us not just in our present time, but in a trajectory of time. And, you know, I think maybe, you know, if the many worlds theory is right, then time, all the things happen, right? So we're maybe not, it's not even time as we currently understand linear time, but like all the things are happening all at once. And so maybe it's navigating through different branches of this arborization tree. Okay, so I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to try to figure out how I can do some screen sharing with some of the maps that I put together. Me to have this conversation about the environment is that, so someone brought this article to my attention. It was from today, I guess, and so it's Liam Sturgis, and I had acknowledged Liam Sturgis's contributions in my map about Foster Colson and the Wellness Company, because he had made some connections between that to my ID, to some genetic testing in Utah, and how that overlapped with this like Operation Underground Railroad child trafficking thing. But I didn't realize that, I guess that was last fall, and perhaps since then, he's since joined the Kennedy RFK Jr. PAC, and he's writing for this thing called the Kennedy Beacon. And so this was an article that he put out today called Has the Natural Resources Defense Council Abandoned Its Core Mission? And so essentially the gist of this is he's, you know, the NRDC that Robert F. Kennedy was like a senior attorney with for many, many, many years, as his riverkeeper status, that they were sort of asking him to drop out of the race because, again, he was going to be a spoiler that would benefit Trump, and that would be terrible for the environment. And so essentially what Liam is saying is like, actually, Robert F. Kennedy is going to be really good on the environment, and you know, he's making it all about partisan politics. Now, I would say anybody who's sort of been through this rodeo of lockdown, I think at this point should realize the ridiculousness of political partisanship in general, and that it really is all polarity and teaming, and that whoever is going to get into that position is meant to be in that position. So to sort of I mean, I guess maybe he has to pay his bills, so he signed on to this PAC, which is, backed, or was backed initially with a large chunk of money from Shanahan, to say such things. But anyway, so this is an environmental article, sort of pitching RFK Jr. like pushing back on NRDC, asking him to step down from the race, talking about Kennedy being uniquely qualified to tackle environmental issues. Now, we need to know that he's made it very clear that Kennedy is about market-based solutions, and that's token engineering. That's all of the amazing work that Leo has done around natural capital, right? And so I think, here he's talking about Kennedy working for the NRDC for 3 decades as a senior attorney. And most people, and again, I care about the environment. NRDC is a corporate front. It's always been a corporate front. I think Liam is sort of implying that it's only recently become a corporate front, but I think we have to understand that the organized nonprofit policy think tank environmental movement has always been prepping us for this moment, for the Greta moment, for nanoparticles in permaculture moment, for digital wallets for giraffes moment. This syncs with everything we've known about cybernetics since the Macy conferences on up through the 70s human potential movement to today of the quantified self. This is what's been coming, and if I'm correct in terms of thinking about quantum mechanics and the environment and the importance of context for the observer on the understanding of reality in the observed system, they've known this for a really long time. So now it's interesting here, he talks about NRC being founded in the 1970 by Whitney North Seymour and Stephen Dugan. It was over a hydroelectric dam. But I will say that over here, which relates to the atomic ecology work that I was doing with Leo and Jason on the parametric insurance. And it really was looking at the natural capital and the tokenization. And in that map, I had James Gustav Speth, who was an environmental advocate. I think he came out of Yale, and an administrator for the UN development program from 93 to 99. And this is just from Influence Watch. But, clearly with the climate change program, it does say here that he was a co-founder of the Natural Resources Defense Council and the New Economy Coalition and the Rockefeller Brothers Fund and the Vermont Natural Resources Council and the World Resources Institute. So Speth has a lot of this, and it's interesting that he's not listed in Sturgis's article, but he was the one that I actually had in my map. The map that I had put together, again, it's a very big map. This was related to the work that Leo was doing around, again, the atomic ecology. We have, let's see, where is it in here? We've got the Huxleys and their environmental, the World Wildlife Fund, looking at these debt for nature swaps. The natural capital ecosystem service conversation. And I will say, again, you've got the influencers like Whitney Webb who do speak to this to some extent, but she's clearly aligned with RFK Jr., has been for a long time. And so, how are they going to thread this needle about natural capital ecosystem services when RFK Jr. is clearly stating that he's about market-based solutions for nature? This is going to be about creating these nature-backed currencies with biodiversity and carbon. I mean, there's no way it's not going to be that. So I think it's, again, and that's the teaming in the influencer culture, that you'll just set aside the internal inconsistencies in the story. You'll forget that, and you'll just go along because you like Whitney, you like Bobby, you like whatever, these people that they've made you to like. And so you're not going to hold them accountable to okay, so when Bobby's talking about market-based solutions for nature, it's impact finance, right? Why is so many years later, no one's still talking about social impact investing? Nobody's talking about cybernetics. Nobody's talking about token engineering and Zargum and how it relates to morphogenetic fields and Levin. It's not happening. We're just how many lines of Substacks have been written about CBDCs, right? And the World Economic Forum. It's not about that, folks. That's the stuff to keep you busy while they're the stuff that they're actually doing is happening. So again, the natural capital ecosystem services, it was theorized by E.F. Schumacher from the Small is Beautiful movement. He was on the UK Coal Board and a specialist in Buddhist economics, right? And he's based in, the Schumacher Institute is based in Great Barrington. And again, this is all a free market, because the free market is about signaling. And, I'd really hoped at some point that Jason would eventually do a discussion of Frederick Soddy. I'd asked him to do this a while back. He was a British radiochemist who was looking at energy credit theory with respect to economics and the environment. And this was in the 1920s and 30s. And so this idea of valuing ecosystems relating to thermodynamics and physics, and then how that is ultimately going to be connected to these stable coins. This is all very much related, and it's not new. Again, this is dating to the 20s and 30s, this idea of valuing ecologies with these different automated systems, both with chemistry, and now it's going to be through tokens and with games attached. So, and then through this, we have Howard Odum, the Odum brothers, who were, again, studying the energy exchange through radioisotopes. And again, that's what Leo's been looking at in terms of Oak Ridge. And I drove past Oak Ridge 3 times. Hopefully I'm going to be able to stop and get some a time in their museums. But so Odum was mentored by Evelyn Hutchinson, who had ties to, he was working on translating some Vernadsky. So Hutchinson was the one who dumped radioisotopes in a Connecticut pond to track energy systems. And then these energy credits that was coming through the Odum brothers and their idea of emergy and complexity theory, systems analysis, and the exchange of energy in the system being tracked through the radioisotopes. But now the tracking is going to be happening through ubiquitous sensing and nanotechnology and frequency. So again, this is just some of the background here, but there's a lot going on. And so over here, we have, okay, so the Center for American Progress had a press release linking COVID and climate change in April of 2020. Tom Udall, a former New Mexico senator and attorney general and New Zealand ambassador, was part of that. This marine biologist was part of it. And let's see, I guess there was someone else. Oh, Thomas Lovejoy, who was an environmental policy advisor working in free markets, and advisor to the UN and the World Wildlife Fund. So they were all there linking COVID and climate. And then related to that was this 30 by 30 conservation proposal that was being advanced by Biden, the Biden administration. And that was part of what they were working on to address climate change and this One Health, right? Because the poor environments is supposed to affect human health, which generally I don't have a problem with, but I know that it's part of this larger engineered system, right? So the NRDC, which was founded in 1970, was a supporter of this 30 by 30 conservation proposal. I have Speth as being a co-founder of that. He's a lawyer, I think, out of Yale. And again, RFK Jr. being the lead environmental attorney on that. So Speth also was the first director in 1982 of the World Resources Institute, addressing global warming research. And again, this is in 1982, and they were working on the first carbon offset in 1989 with, AES Corporation Energy in 1991. And it was seed funding through the MacArthur Foundation, which is insurance money based in Chicago. And the MacArthur Foundation are the ones behind the digital media and learning. So that's consciousness management. And they were also major promoters of Second Life, which Philip Rosedale developed. And they were doing virtual economy with tokenized payment systems in their Linden labs. And again, I would point out Linden being a tree in terms of the many worlds theory. And the Mormon Transhumanist Association had a hangout on the Second Life in 2007. So again, just pulling together this idea of climate change, global warming research, NRDC being put together, the linking of all of that with COVID. Like, this is nothing new. This has been a slow build for decades, and Kennedy has been in the center of it for decades. So how they're going to thread that needle, I guess they're going to just create some influencer stories that make us feel like, well, hey, at least it's not a central bank digital currency. I really like my community behavior tokens. They're gamified. I like to play the games. I like to play the games with the influencers I like, with the content I like. And we'll play and we'll emit our signal, and we will be coordinated into the ant computer that I was showing you a week or so ago about my Vermont trip, when I was in Montpelier and stopping by the Institute for Sustainable Communities that was by the co-op that was there, and just pointing out that this map was something that Leo and Brandy and I were working on like a couple years ago. It was a South Florida regional climate change compact, and it was involving like Broward County, in Miami-Dade and Monroe, and of course all of that is blockchain. All of that is being set up for parametric insurance linked to like coral reef social impact bonds, and this Institute for Sustainable Communities was founded in 1991, and it was the co-founder of this was Madeline Kunin, who was had been the governor of Vermont, who was also an ambassador to Switzerland, which we've got both Jung and the token engineering, and she was in part of the Clinton administration with education, and was a major promoter of Goals 2000, which is, again, all of the cybernetic standards. She helped write Goals 2000, and she helped establish the Office of Education Technology. She was also very big, again, on the environment, this Institute for Sustainable Communities, and the chair of her environmental program was this guy, Jonathan Lash, who became the president of Hampshire College, and he was also working with the Clinton administration on sustainability, and he had been the former president of the World Resources Institute. And so I do want to point out that this World Resources Institute, one of the major donors for this is Stephen Ross of the Related Companies. He's a New York real estate developer who does a lot of work in Florida. He actually was the developer of Hudson Yards in New York City, and he made a lot of his money in affordable housing, and knowing how to work the affordable housing situation. So we know now that affordable housing and smart housing and regional planning is part of the ant computer, and ubiquitous sensing in your housing situations is going to be part of that. The sensors are going to be linked to your UBI. That's all part of like Mark Andreessen and Adam Neumann, the flow system. The housing is the environmental context for lots of people. It's where they live. It's where the majority of the quantified self data is going to be collected on you, especially if you start to work from home in a haptic suit with smart glass on your walls. Stephen Ross would be the kind of developer who would be creating all of this. He has a very major presence in Palm Beach, which is the area that Brandy and I were looking at. Palm Beach is central in terms of what works government that I've talked about, like the blockchaining government that Bobby wants to do is linked to what works cities with Bloomberg. They've got open data portals. They have smart streetscapes. They have participatory budgeting, which again is going to be part of the digital twinning. Volunteerism, because you're not going to work, you're just going to have to volunteer for your UBI, and this is linked through the United Way and the health systems of Palm Beach. So, Stephen Ross is super important, and, he's this major donor to the World Resources Institute, which is connected to SPEF, and SPEF is connected to NRDC, and this is all situated in sustainability in Vermont. But it's not just Vermont. It also extends into Florida. And then we can see that even in Florida, you've got all of these big New York, hedge fund traders and options traders and people who are feeding, were feeding a lot of money to Ron DeSantis at the time, because they wanted everybody to go down to Florida and be free agents in educational technology. And this is where it overlaps with what I was talking about with Lynn, with environment and the educational technology. Children in their environment. And that's why we have the cities of LRNG and the gamified badge collection in the environment. It's because they want the signaling press release from December of 2020. So we were at the sort of the height of the COVID lockdowns at the time from World Resources Institute, and Stephen Ross was committing $63.5 million for resilient, sustainable cities. And again, he is the affordable housing real estate developer. So we have to understand that the environmental system is really about setting up the game board, the ubiquitous sensing game board. I get into the map about the wellness company. I wanted to walk through a couple of profiles that I had entered years ago into Little Sis. This is a very important person. Her name is Deborah Estrin. She's based at Cornell Technion, which is in New York City. And I think I have the clip of, maybe I'll go through and I'll walk through this thing. But my friend Juliana and I, we went out to Roosevelt Island and we set an intention there, both at the Cornell Technion campus and then at the Roosevelt, the FDR Memorial, which overlooks the United Nations across the water. And so it was very significant work that we did that day. It was like over a year ago. From March of 2023, I went up to give a presentation for my friend from Utah who was attending the United Nations Conference on the Status of Women, and I presented to her group. And while I was there, I actually met up with some other friends and we set some intentions around New York City. So I'm not going to do all of these right now, but I did talk previously about Cornell Technion. This is on Roosevelt Island. This is the campus. It's about 4 or 5 buildings. Bloomberg is a major funder. Also Tata, which is an Indian company foundation, Tata Innovation Center. And Juliana and I, we did a little installation with some natural materials. She collects all sorts of wonderful things around New York City, including feathers. And so we've got an assortment of wood and stones and leaves and feathers and flowers and pine cones there. And my connection is getting slower. This is an article that's talking about the new startup factory, the Tech Grad School, which is Cornell Tech. And of course, I was talking about a little bit the small data lab here. And Deborah Estrin, Michael Bloomberg is on the board of overseers. Google gave a big grant to the small data lab, shocker. Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, again, they were behind the Austin My Pass project. And grants also from Adobe, United Health, and the National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health. Also, one of the people connected to this, I think David Siegel, the Siegel Family Endowment. He was connected with Cornell Technion. He was with Two Sigma Investments and the education technology advisor for the Robinhood Foundation. And so again, we've got the health tech and the ed tech coming back together. He did his undergrad at Princeton in computer science and then his PhD at MIT. And his business partner is John Overdeck. And so again, the Robinhood Foundation is Paul Tudor Jones, another options trader, and making these predictions, right? Which I think, again, goes back to quantum mechanics, in my opinion. And Siegel Family Endowment is behind this public interest technology university network, learning and technology at Robinhood, the machine learning initiative at MIT, peer-to-peer university, jobs for the future, Mozilla, which is the badges. So it's all about the signals. And then, he worked with Overdeck, John Overdeck, and the Overdeck Foundation is also pouring money into this stuff. Lena, the digital surveillance of babies, where you slip a recorder in their onesie, promoting blended learning, donating to West Ed, the Lighthouse Schools. And I think that's interesting, the Kennedy Beacon, because everything that we keep talking about is about light and photonics and these lighthouse schools, that we've got light, that this Kennedy Beacon, this PAC is focused on the lighthouse idea, STEM funding. So Overdeck is sort of key in all of this. So that was Cornell Technion. And then we also went to the Four Freedoms Park, which is a memorial to FDR.
Little squirrel nest. Oh, yeah. Yay.
Freeloader.
Oh, fun. Wow.
The FDR Memorial, it's interesting because I was supposed to do a much bigger intention. It was the solstice. It was, and it got derailed by a particular person in New York City. But we were going to do a whole interpreted program around Cornell Technion and the FDR Memorial and overlooking the UN. But, I think we're told a certain story about history, and I don't think we really understood the nature of the social safety net that was later sort of advanced more by LBJ and, the benevolence of FDR that was conveyed to most people. There's more to it than that. And his role in Bretton Woods, sort of getting that set up. And, again, we think back to Galila Banarzi and Bancor and Keynes and New Hampshire and, that 75th anniversary with Charles Eisenstein and Rianne Einsler, I guess, up there promoting nature, right? And systems, and these things that sound really benevolent, but you're not understanding that it's being linked to social physics and to token engineering and all of the things that I keep talking about. Even though those people, the central bankers and the people who are pushing blockchain and crypto and impact finance were all present at that Bretton Woods. So I don't think when I'm walking around the FDR Memorial, again, that's overlooking, and it's surrounded by water, right? The riverkeeper stuff. The water is flowing, and it's flowing by the monument. And there was a smallpox ruin right there. There's a lot going on between Cornell Tech and the smallpox ruin and the FDR Memorial, and then overlooking the UN, and that continuity and the story that's being told as artifacts in that space. But those stories matter. Understanding those stories in a level of complexity that we're not used to trying to hold things, all these different conflicting things at once. Like, we need to start practicing holding those because it is important. And, I just had someone, mention about, getting forwarded talks with Charles, interviews with Charles Eisenstein, and that people are just not understanding, the Bobby philosopher and what actually is afoot, that I said it's kind of like those videos when you go, like the people show online where they go into a video game and they try to tell the NPCs that they're actually programmed, and the NPCs insist that they're not being programmed. And, and I'm not even here saying that I'm not programmed, because I'm sure there's some level I'm being programmed too. But, when it's useful to even just acknowledge that that's the case. But yeah, like the people who are trading around Charles Eisenstein videos and, Mr. Doe-eyed, I love nature and I'm the philosopher king to the Camelot guy. But, if you introduce this idea of early childhood impact finance and Sepp Kamvar and his franchised Montessori schools with the Internet of Things slippers and, Kamvar's connections to Cello, this digital currency of social physics, and that Charles Eisenstein is an advisor to Cello, and what does that mean? Does Charles really like this idea of tracking preschool children around with AI cameras and smart clothes so that Goldman Sachs can make their bucks, and that it's really not just about money, that maybe it's about some sort of interdimensional signaling to the field that the children are able to do that the grown-up people who have been fully domesticated can't do anymore. Yeah, there's more complicated stories we need to be talking about. So it was nice, since the initial larger event that we had planned for Cornell Technion and the Four Freedoms Park, and again, freedom under the dome. It's interesting that FDR had the Constitution, I think, for Japan, and that Japan has played such a role in what's coming with the humanoid robotics, and the Moonshot project. But to be in that space with Juliana, even if it was a much smaller scale, I think we still set a very lovely, energetic intention there. There were a few extra photos from the visit. You can see the feathers, and I think we had pussy willows. So you can see the little pussy willow feet and the mums. And Juliana had this card, nice card made out with felt with a heart with love. And this is the smallpox ruin I was talking about. Smallpox hospital from the 19th century, 18th century, maybe 19th century. Oh, so there's Juliana with the bowl. We're doing, this was the bowl from my friend in the Netherlands. That was one of the first times I got to use it. Well, you can sort of see we had our little heart intention down there amidst all of the glass in the middle. But Estrin is operating out of Cornell Tech, and she was a leader in the development of the Internet of Things. And she was part of the committee of this Embedded Everywhere research agenda for networked systems. And that was in 2001. And she was a board member for the Commons Project, which was in the summer of 2020. Again, digital services for the common good, which is impact investing, but it also included the Common Pass, which, as we know, were the biometric passports. But those are not going to be exclusive of, certain kinds of health status. It's definitely going to be pivoting into wellness. And she was a partner in a program with MasterCard called The Role of Digital Identity in Healthcare Service Transformation. And so I think we need to understand that in the context of what Nicole Shanahan is asking for, because this is what she's asking for. She's asking for this. It was always going to be blockchain healthcare. They're just going to try to tell you a story so that you accept it because you like the Camelot version of digital identity better than the World Economic Forum, right? It's going to be Bobby versus Klaus, and you're going to pick Bobby as opposed to just saying, like, we just shouldn't be doing this. I don't want to be an ant computer in your social computation program. Here we have the Good Health Pass Collaborative that was, connected with MITRE Company and Nanomix and ID 2020. So this is ultimately what Estrin is about, and she was backed, I think, by the MacArthur Foundation at some point. She was connected to this small data lab, and this is, I was looking at this like 5 years ago. They were working on something called the smart shopping cart. So something would keep track of all the food that you buy and parse that for data, like the Google Selfish Ledger, make predictions about you. And one of her partners in this, the research base, was John Pollock, who's also at Cornell Technion. He was an architect of the Commons Project and an open source health app, Curiosity Health. Pushcart, that was the food purchase tracking app that they had. And so Vera Whole Health, behavioral health coaching, right? That's the whole mental health stuff that, the human potential movement, right? But Bobby's going to push that for mental health systems, mental health services in his San Patrignano. So one of the things that really stood out to me was this idea of Wellcoin, which was a blockchain currency based on performance of prescribed healthy behaviors. And let me see if these links are still live. So Wellcoin was established in 2019. Oh no, it says it was closed. It was founded in 2011, and it was an online community enabling users, local merchants, and healthcare providers to earn Wellcoins for healthy activities. Now, this is really important because this is the stuff that Foster Colson's group is, in my opinion, is setting the stage for that. Let me see if Wellcoin still comes back here. Can a virtual currency make you healthier? The founder of Wellcoin thinks so. And so when I say that the marathon of this is not lockdowns, but is managed wellness, managed well behavior activities, this is the stuff that the biohacking people are going to be all about, right? Wellcoin members collect currency by logging healthy steps throughout their day and redeem them for discounts on the App Store. So in order to really make sense of this, though, we have to understand the background of of Deborah Estrin, who is an Amazon scholar, right, who came out of UCLA, who was part of this embedded everywhere system, right? I'm not sure if they, yeah. So who else was at this embedded everywhere program in 2001? A former electrical engineer with DARPA, computer science at Harvard, CTO of Lucent. Again, we're talking about light. Chairman of Wind River Systems. I don't know. Aeronautics at MIT, UCLA physics, computer science. This was funded by DARPA, and it happened through the National Research Council. Let me see who else. And this was at this around a similar time, a little bit after the USC Institute for Creative Technologies. Yeah, so and here's Deborah Estrin, the former chair of electrical engineering at Stanford. So this has been coming for, a very long time, folks, several decades, but we're not putting the pieces together because we still think that the plan is some authoritarian puppet master plan, when in my opinion, the actual plan is that they're going to get Bobby to sell us, and Catherine Austin Fitts and these people to sell everybody on community currencies and social physics so that they will play the game and emit the signals permanently for whatever coordinated behavior is supposed to be happening. In this corner of the world, we're below Game B and Jim Rutt, and we're over in sort of the integral theory area, the Center for Integral Wisdom and all of the Ken Wilber corner of things, and spiral dynamics, and this idea of all of these things overlapping with the human potential movement and transpartisanship. And again, Jason was at this conference back in the day. It was in Denver. He was doing videography and saw, Barbara Marx Hubbard and all these people, this American Citizen Summit in Denver in 2009. They were all getting together. They were doing spiral dynamics there, and they were talking sort of transpartisan, getting this, coming up with new political structures, which is what Bobby is ultimately doing. And so I wanted to draw your attention to this section. So Michael Osterlength was a founding member of the Integral Institute, and Integral Life was spun off of that. It was connected to Ken Wilber. And again, Ken Wilber has these ties to the Theosophists. He was published in the Main Current, Fritz Kunst's Main Currents for Modern Thought in the 70s. And let's see, so Wilber is connected to the Integral Institute. Osterlink is a founding member with that. He was affiliated with SEAL Fit Mind stuff with the Navy. He was very interested in medical freedom and data privacy. So again, this is part of self-sovereign digital identity with your health information, that you're going to be an agent participating in the gamification. And so this goes, so we've got the Navy, we have supposed medical freedom, but will likely be on blockchain. He was a founder of the Transpartisan Center that was working on integrative medicine, connected with the transpartisan movement through Joseph McCormick, who was a leader in that, and they met in 2006. And they were, let's see, McCormick was working on this Democracy in America, Reuniting America, which was funded by the Fetzer Institute, which is, again, all the spiritualist stuff. And John Steiner, who is a mediator in social venture partners and sustainability. So we've kind of got this stuff with like self-improvement, Navy SEALs, transpartisanship, health freedom, integral theory, this idea of the human potential movement through spiral dynamics and politics. And then up here, we have, let's see, the Center for Integral Wisdom with John Mackey. So this is bringing us back to Texas, and this goes back to with what Lynn and I were talking about, or the post that I made earlier today, is that it's about agents, about using educational technology to data mine Texas's children. So John Mackey was the original founder of Whole Foods before it became today's Whole Foods, like the co-op in Austin. He was the board chair of the Center for Integral Wisdom, and he was promoting conferences at Esalen with Mark Gaffney, who is sort of a sexual predator rabbi mystic. And so the Center for Integral Wisdom sort of was facilitating these conscious capitalism projects. And again, the free market is what's going to be coming with the libertarian leaning that Bobby is putting out, because the free market is the signal. They are using markets to use markets with token engineering as gamified signal deployment. And so I just want to sort of mention how this is all situated with the integral theory, the spiral dynamics, market signaling and coordination, and how this is kind of underpinned by, this, Gaffney is now the president of the Barbara Marx Hubbard's Foundation for Conscious Evolution. And this conscious evolution is that we evolve into the noosphere as ants, as networked, embodied consciousness for some sort of problem solving. But the health freedom stuff is embedded in all of this, because they need our biology, our embodied intelligence, our embodied spirituality to do the computations, but they have to be networked through markets and tokens. And so that's this part of the map. This is a big map about Dallas and all sorts of everything but the kitchen sink is in here. But I do have a big section on Foster Colson and the Wellness Company. And within that context, based on Liam Sturgis's article in the September of 2023, he was looking at predictive technology in Salt Lake City area and how it was interfacing with this Sound of Freedom documentary and sort of the child trafficking conversation. And it was mainly through the fact that the Wellness Company was partnering with Pure Blood Registry, and Pure Blood Registry was an affiliate with My ID, which is QR health records, right? And that's exactly what Shanahan is, the kind of thing that she's going to be pushing. And so he was talking about the fact that the antibody tests that were incorporated into the My ID digital health record were developed by a predictive technology group in Salt Lake City. And then there was a ton of overlap in the staffing between that and this Operation Underground Railroad Sound of Freedom, as well as with backcountry.com e-commerce, which was controlled by Liberty Media. And again, connected to John Malone, who was looking at translational medicine in Colorado and weird overlaps between animal medicine and people medicine. And so, I thought that was really good work. That was, really good work on Sturgis's part. But I didn't get a chance to talk about this part of the map yet. And, when people are not understanding that managed wellness and gamification is part of this. And again, I guess if you're working for, Bobby's pack, you're not going to point this out, especially if Shanahan's money is paying your salary. But this is what we actually have to understand is the long game. And so we have, the Foster Colson, Canadian entrepreneur, based out of Port Alberni, British Columbia. What I don't know how many people have really talked about, because I'm not on social media, but I found this piece really interesting in the Wellness Company, that the Peter Galouli, who was the CEO of the Wellness Company, he was at the time that I made this map, that he had formerly been vice president of operations at Dust Identity. And Dust Identity was essentially affiliated with MIT Media Lab, and they were working on, let me see, I think it's like nanoparticles. So here he is. Galouli is here in the bottom right corner, and this Dust project, let me just see if I can pull it up. Yeah, so he's still there. We've got all the networking, and I should have pulled this out. But Dust Identity, between September 2019 and July of 2022, so for 2 years, he managed four multi-million-dollar defense work programs, and personally closed the first commercial client, a non-DoD client. He delivered key milestones to support a $40 million Series B financing round, including approval for a flight on a major defense platform and international product deployment. So he's working a lot with defense contracting. And see, yeah, this dust identity platform, the ultimate proof of trust for any product, and a physical identity you can trust forever, and engineered diamond dust to create object markers that are discrete, durable, and clone proof. So that's exactly what you would need. Start dusting, right? Like, what kind of dust is this guy doing? And the wellness company, right? Like, and these are artifacts. So these are artifacts in the Ant computer that are linked to diamond nanotechnology. Let's see the sectors: sports, art, supply chain, aerospace, and defense, premium retail. And I think this was a spin-off out of MIT. So authentic products. Now we have to understand that we're authentic products. In 2011, Ophir Gathan, Jonathan Hodges, and Dirk Englund met as PhDs at Columbia studying quantum characteristics of diamonds. A few years later at MIT, DARPA approached them with a problem in trusted supply chain solutions. From there, dust identity was born. Today, dust is embedded in some of the most complex value streams for organizations, leading initiatives centered around national security. Right, so we've got nano diamond dust identity is baked into the wellness company, so that's pretty fascinating. And then later he ended up working for the Saudis in petrochemicals, which doesn't sound like it's a lot about wellness. Here's, yeah, so here, these were the links about Dutch identity and dust identity, yeah. Advanced identity tools to protect and connect the most valuable products and physical objects, from battlefields to playing fields and everything in between. Everything in between. So DARPA. So this is welcome to your wellness company. It's led by a guy who's working with DARPA on permanent identity with nanotechnology. And again, like, we know that Foster Colson's family business is in wildfire fighting, which is not only dropping water, but dropping other sorts of foam agents with synthetic materials. And the thing about wildfires is there's a lot of modeling that does relate to cellular automata and complexity theory. So they're all based in British Columbia. As we know, Vancouver is sort of a hotbed for all of this stuff. Now they're out on, I think, Victoria Island. But they're working with, let's see, in addition to their wildfire business, the family has a gaming center in Port Alberni, Rimrock Gaming. And I think they bought it or sold it, and they gave the proceeds to the Alberni Valley Community Foundation. Now, it's important to understand that these community foundations are going to be really central to the wellness management, just like community banking, because they're going to be investing in outcomes, and the outcomes are going to be managed data. There are 191 community foundations in Canada, and the first was launched in the 1920s. In the US, I think the first big community foundation was in Cleveland, which is no surprise because of Rockefeller and Standard Oil. In 2023, there was a vital signs report with United Way. And again, United Way is really very central to human capital finance, and the ALICE program, the low working poor impact finance program. A lot of this is linked to sustainability. And here the report is acknowledging social planning councils and issues around social and environmental sustainability, in partnership with the United Way of South Vancouver Island. And so they're collecting all sorts of data about vital signs in the community through the community foundations programs. And a partner in this is something called Environics Institute, which is working on, it's big data. It's the housing stuff, public opinion, citizen voice, connection, well-being. It's all of the stuff that I've been talking about in terms of signaling. And among the foundations that are backing it includes that Bertelsmann Stiftung, which I had mentioned in the Lidditz, which was a German digital media company that was very draconian, implemented a lot of very draconian welfare policies in Germany, and was promoting UBI. And so we also see MasterCard in here. And let's see, here's the chair. He's on this guy, applying basic income lens to British Columbia's demand side housing programs, right? So universal basic income and housing, because they need you in the environment. Remember, I'm going back to the quantum stuff. They need to know where you are as an observer in the environment. And so the housing is part of that. Smart housing is a huge part of that. And affiliated with this vital signs report is something called the Community Social Council of Greater Victoria, which was started in 1936. And here you go, you've got, they're promoting Victoria ID services, so digital identity, climate equity, and community innovation. And again, I'm not against social services, I just don't want them on blockchain and tied into the Ant computer. It's interesting, in the 1930s, technocracy was really big in British Columbia, and that was Elon Musk's grandfather. There's a whole paper here from the 70s about the technocrats, and the history of the technocrats in Canada, from somebody at Simon Fraser University. And so that was going on at the same time as this social planning council. And there's, a whole big collection of the roots of technocracy in British Columbia at the University, UBC, University of British Columbia Library. You can check that out if you want to. If you're local, you can check that out. And British Columbia is really a lead in the digital ID space. So, and I'm trying to remember, I think Naomi Klein's brother-in-law is working in social impact in Vancouver, pretty sure. So sustainability with digital trust. And, I put this out a while ago, trust over IP with the Linux Foundation. There's a whole big thing about trusted workers through blockchain, and trust over IP is part of this California digital identity map. So what stays in Vancouver and British Columbia, what happens there doesn't stay there. It spreads out everywhere. This Community Social Council is working on coordinating ID services for underserved populations, and of course that's going to be social impact stuff, ultimately linked to UBI. There is a UBI pilot in there's a campaign in British Columbia to get UBI going. They have a whole UBI works. And again, what works? The working stuff is the key performance indicators. So, here's a whole campaign. British Columbia, Prairies, Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. Basic income can kickstart the economic recovery and solve poverty. But they don't really talk about complexity theory and agent-based simulation modeling. Let's see, here's the potential economic impacts on basic income programs in Canada. And these programs have already been out there for a while. There have been earlier pilots, but I think now that's definitely going to be coming online. And so, British Columbia, where Foster Colson his family is based. I don't think he's based there anymore. I think he might be in Florida or something like that, which is another blockchain area. But it's deeply involved in digital identity, in managed wellness, through community foundations, the United Way, various coordinated services. In my opinion, it links to technocracy, these earlier origins, and then, but not just technocracy to control you, but technocracy to bring people together towards being observers in a system, in my opinion, towards manifestation in some way. The Kennedy Beacon, the article that it's from, is a Substack for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., supported by the Super PAC American Values 2024. And they encourage you to submit your email there. And then we've got in Politico an article, Super PAC raises $2.1 million after RFK Jr. announced his running mate. Half of it came from the Super PAC's co-founder. And then we've got Nicole and Bobby, and it says, let's see, the Super PAC, about half came from PAC co-founder Mark Gorton, Gorton. He co-founded LimeWire and the trading firm Tower Research Capital. And that the $1 million would help propel the campaign forward following the inspired choice of Nicole Shanahan. So then we've got trading firms, and that options trading is also part of the signaling. So, this is about money. I mean, to pretend that this isn't about money and power is the whole thing is a charade, but it is ultimately about money and power and controlling our understanding of the narrative. And they've done a really good job. I mean, I have to say, like, look at all of the influencers that Bobby bought, like even before Nicole showed up. I mean, he's bought pretty much all the stable of influencers. And that's why the conversations have happened the way they've happened. That we only talk about Klaus. We only talk about central bank digital currency. We don't talk about the fact that digital twinning is going to be used for other things than strictly health status, systems. We're not going to talk about social impact. We're going to downplay Kennedy's role as a venture capitalist linked to emerging technologies. We're going to downplay so many of these things, and we're going to create a reality. But that's the observer part. That's the idea of understanding your environment. They can use your digital twin to create an environment and create a reality and install it in your brain as a mind virus through these memes and these feeds, and get you to believe whatever they want you to believe. And it's really frustrating to not be able to like break through. But I see how powerful this is. Like, once you are stuck in a box, you are in that box, and people can knock all day long at that box, but you're not coming out. And this is Liam's, rather naive, or I don't know, naive, rather like, I'm sure this is probably one of a series of articles that needs to try to thread this needle of the environmentalist Bobby with market-based solutions in energy and blah, 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 blah. And the health freedom Bobby, they need to be brought together. And so this is one of these kinds of articles that's going to be seeking to bring it together. I would think that just look at Cory Morningstar's work. If you don't understand that the Natural Resources Defense Council has been a tool the entire time, that this is nothing new, you don't understand the game. It has always been a tool, and Robert F. Kennedy's positionality as a senior attorney in that means that he has been part of that. Like, I think I'll pause for a second and insert, I actually have an email to Michael Cain where I actually looked at all of the funding from NRDC, and it was all of the foundations that I was super, super duper concerned about. And it's just so duplicitous of RFK Jr. to come out against the Rockefeller Foundation when they were like funding his payroll and he was senior lead attorney for decades. It's just, they treat us like we're stupid, right? They treat us like we're stupid over and over and over again. But then for the most part, people go along with it. An email exchange I had with Mary Holland and Michael Cain about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and social impact finance and NRDC. And Michael Cain, again, who has been on staff of Children's Health Defense, he had just recently joined, I think at this time, this is December of 2021. He was formerly a teacher, right, in the New York City schools with special needs kids. And so I thought we had some common ground on this, but clearly they were just being apologists for this, essentially saying I called him controlled opposition or whatever. And I never did, because I don't use that. But, here's Cain saying like his book was great and he was just interviewed by James Corbett. And, we just have to, he's working with BLM and the Proud Boys and all of this stuff. And so my response was just, because Michael was a teacher, if you look at the funders of the Natural Resources Defense Council, they're the same people who were funding the destruction of public education. And as a public school teacher, a former public school teacher, I thought that he would care about this. And so this is a PDF from the pipeline, the major funders, Apollo Management, ARC Asset Management, the Carnegie Corporation, many, many grants from the Climate Works Foundation, the Ford Foundation, Green Tech Action Fund, the MacArthur Foundation. Now, these are at the times when Bobby's still there. Now, the MacArthur Foundation was central to digital media and learning. The Rockefeller Brothers Fund, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like every year was like 400, let's see, what are these amounts? 2015, 450,000. 2017, 150,000. 2014, 35,000. 350,000, 600,000, 350,000, 275. These are not small amounts of money. The Rockefeller Foundation has probably like over 20 major six-figure grants to NRDC. Now, how does Bobby square that with the Rockefeller Foundation and the way he talks about it, right? He can't. And the Packard Foundation, they were putting children on, they were behind the putting children on the data zone in San Jose. The Walton Foundation, that's Sam Walton, Walmart, they were destroyers of public schools. The Hewlett Foundation, Hewlett, I mean, again, many six-figure gifts. And so if you, and Hewlett Packard was behind a lot of the educational technology rollout. So within that context, you can't pretend that NRDC is somehow this wonderful environmental group that's somehow just recently captured by interests. It's always served a function. And in that way, Bobby has always been a handmaiden of corporate environmentalism. He is now, if he is in a position of influence, he will be in the future with his market-based solutions tied to tokens, tied to digital wallets, tied to, and they will frame it as a community currency, as some sort of free market, gamified, libertarian participation project, right? Because narrative is everything. Environmental context is everything. How you understand reality is everything. And they have so much data on everyone from the feeds and how you interact with the feeds that they can tell you whatever they want you to understand to create your own reality around you so that you can't even get out of the bubble or out of the box. I mean, that's the whole point of what we are in right now. So NRDC has been a part of this, the climate change discussion since the 80s. Bobby's been a part of it. He hasn't changed. Like, we've seen the clips. He's just here for the market-based solutions, which is the token engineering. And you know, this idea that somehow just recently it's become an extension of industry is just misguided. It's very misguided. And yeah, no, it's always been this way. It's always been this way. And here he closes, while NRDC has undoubtedly done important work to defend the environment and Native communities from pollution, its function has shifted to supporting Democratic candidates and policies like the Green New Deal, which serves the big environment industry more than the environment itself. And I think it's ridiculous to imagine that somehow Bobby is going to be not part of the big green agenda. Like, he's never walked back his UN SDG position. He's never walked back his impact finance position. He is the big green agenda, right? But they want to brand it as Camelot.